After reading through chapter 4, there were definitely some things that stuck out to me that I feel like happened in my own life, but then I also read through some things that definitely hit me as, oh, that's going to be useful in my future career as a teacher. And the first one that hit home with me was the habituation on page 86. It talks about you forget to notice the stimuli after it happens so many times, like the refrigerator buzz that you don't realize because it's just been there. And I think this is for me, like when I'm driving home from work or from school, it's a route that I've driven so many times that I'll be thinking about other things that I have to do in life and things like that. And so then I'll get a couple ways down the road and I'll be like, I don't even remember driving that just because I've done it so many times and it's so habitual that you kind of forget where you've driven. So that was that. And then over on the other page, it talks about implications for learning design. It talks about consistency. And this is where I really thought of it as a future teacher because I've noticed I've worked with kids before. I've volunteered in a kindergarten classroom. I've also worked with an after-school program, and young learners need consistency and they need routine. And so they need to know like how dependable it is. Like, okay, I come into class, I'm gonna sit on the rug, I'm gonna listen to a story, I'm gonna write in my journal. Whatever the routine is, I think it's good for them. And then it goes on to say that consistency is bad, and I also think that because if they know that they're going to be reading a story or if they're going to be insert activity here, whatever, they can tend to just go through the motions. I don't know if this happens so much with younger learners because it's new information, but like if it's a different story. But I think with older learners, the more consistency I know as when I was in high school, if I knew it was the same thing, I was like, oh, I don't really have to learn the information. I just can copy, and it doesn't really go into your memory. And then it also says that variability is bad too, which I think that for younger students is, well, I think any learner, let me amend that statement, because if you're trying to learn and everything changes, like if you have a professor in college that goes from a PowerPoint to an activity and is constantly changing, I feel like, well, at least my mind is so boggled and trying to adjust to the new situation, it's hard for me to learn. And as a college level student, if that's hard for me, I can only imagine how hard it would be for a kindergartner who's just learning how to learn and how to be a student in a classroom, how boggling that would be to be changing and changing and changing and changing. And granted, like changing in the classroom is good because it keeps them their attention, but changing too much, I think, could be bad for their learning. So skipping ahead to page 100, it talks about emotional context, and this I wrote all over my book because this is so important for kindergartners, well, for elementary school learners, because it's hard for them to set aside their emotions and learn. I mean, older learners, they can be like, okay, I'm really having a tough time at home, but I know I need to learn this stuff. But little kids, they can't do that. If they came in and said, my dog died this morning, or my parents are getting a divorce, or that's some emotional baggage, it's going to be hard for them to put that aside to learn your lesson. You can't just be like, okay, I'm sorry, now let's learn some math, or let's read this book, let's work on our times tables. They just can't do that. They can't put that emotional baggage aside to learn. And so I thought that was really important. And the last little bit I have is it goes to page 109, and it has this cute little Venn diagram about what you think you know and what you actually know. And I think little kids, they don't realize how much they know. So they need reminders in class like, oh, you remember that time we were able to write a whole paragraph, or you were able to construct a whole story. So they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember I can do that. This project that you just presented us that just seemed really daunting and overwhelming doesn't seem so bad now because I remember doing it before. So that was what I got out of chapter 4.